Content and Consequences lifts the curtain between the creative and business side of entertainment. There are those that create content and those that deal with the business consequences of making it. Featuring live interviews with industry disruptors, we showcase the process and aftermath of creative content development. Content and Consequences is part of Rogue Matter, a digital content platform providing programming and entertainment that shatters boundaries and colors outside the lines. Join the movement. Go Rogue. RogueMatter.com. Hey everybody, it's Jordan Elizabeth Gelber, and welcome back to the first episode of Season 2 of Content and Consequences. Today we are on the amazing platform Filmocracy, what has to be my most favorite hangout place virtually that I've discovered during the 2020 experience. But everybody, please meet Paul Jun, the creator of Filmocracy. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for having me. We're here on your turf today.
Thanks for having each other.
Yay. Paul, I feel like I see you probably every other week. It's just because we've become like best friends, even though we technically have never met.
Yeah, that's this new world, right? But hopefully we will meet in person one day.
Yes, one day. And I'll be like, oh, you're a real person. So for those that don't know, what
well, Filmocracy is first and foremost a streaming platform for independent filmmakers. We're providing wider film distribution and marketing power behind your films because that's one of the most difficult parts of being an independent filmmaker is getting your film out there and getting people to watch. So we reward people with some virtual popcorn for watching and rating your movie. But we also started hosting some virtual film festivals during the pandemic, and that kind of snowballed into this larger thing of just hosting lots of events and partnerships. And now here we are on this really cool podcast, and you know, we'll continue to grow. I don't know what direction we'll be in, but at the end of the day, it's just about helping independent filmmakers gain wider distribution.
You know, Paul, one of the reasons I was so happy to meet you and work with you is because you have a similar mission to me, which is we want to empower other content creators. And there seems to be so many options, but not enough like navigation or directions to do so. And on this podcast, we discuss the consequences of content creation. Because as you know, most people think that, oh, I'm going to make something and then I'm going to bring it to a festival and then what? But there's so many difficulties, like you mentioned, between how does my content get seen by an audience? How does my content get digested? How do people distribute it? All these things. Consequences topic, we are discussing distribution and outreach of your content. So I think your interactive platform is awesome because it encourages people to watch, but you've also made it so people all over the world can have access to content that's involved in other festivals. How did you get started in this whole weird world of virtual festivals?
Well, the streaming platform launched in May of last year, 2020, and it was hard because there was a lot of other competitors, really big corporate competitors that were just dominating headlines. So you had Peacock announcing and HBO Max really pushing hard, Apple TV Plus announcing new movies. You had Quibi with their billions of dollars.
Quibi.
So, yeah, Quibi. So, you know, it was really hard to get people to notice us because they were just kind of desensitized to streaming news, and I think they still a bit are. But we had a lot of film festivals who were giving us content, and they came to us. One festival in particular called the LA Brazilian Film Festival asked, can you do a film festival online? And I just said yes, because that's what you do as an entrepreneur. You just say yes to everything.
Right.
We embarked on this journey, and we started putting together our streaming with some virtual conferencing and like, how do you make it all seamless and work together, but also feel interesting? Because there's a lot of other providers out there that do virtual festivals, but they're basically just creating like a Netflix replication and you're on demand watching movies. And as we all know, festivals are much more than just the content that they're showing. It's about people and connections and giving the filmmakers a chance to shine during Q&As and meet their fans, future fans. So that's what we have in mind whenever we're coming up with what can we build, what can we expand on to make this experience more interesting.
Definitely. And you definitely succeeded in doing that because the interactive component to Filmocracy was something that was very unique compared to all these other somewhat virtual events. I wouldn't consider them virtual events more than Zoom conferences, but I think that I wasn't aware at the time that Filmocracy was originally trying to become a streaming platform. So what kind of drew you to creating a streaming platform at that period of time?
Yeah, right. There's no shortage of streaming platforms.
So many.
Yeah, too many to count. And there's a lot of really good ones that focus on particular genres or demographics, but in general, like all of those don't really have that big of an audience. And so I wanted to make something where, you know, if you're trying to be on Netflix or Amazon or these really big platforms and get those big MGs, big advances, it's really hard if you don't have big casts or big budgets. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but the main thing is just there's a lot of competition. There's way too many films out there, way too many filmmakers for the world to really like give everyone a chance. So, having these big name brand actors is really what helps people decide on their content. And I felt like that was wrong because, you can have, Benedict Cumberbatch in your film. It still might be awful for myriad of reasons. Probably not though, because he's amazing. But you can make great films now on your own, independently with not huge budgets. The technology is there, the financing is there through crowdfunding and many other means. So the only real problem is nobody wants to give a chance to these movies because it's too risky. What does independent film mean? Very often it can mean work of art, or it could mean backyard home movie made by like a camcorder on a cassette tape. So for the end user, I just kind of default to things I might recognize or I have heard about because that's the least risky proposition to me. I don't want to watch something for 20 minutes and be like, why did I do that? That was a waste of time, and I knew it was going to be a waste of time, but I did it anyway. So our rating system that we've built and our reward system that goes with it is the key component that's going to make this run. So as people watch movies, they get more virtual popcorn for trying out movies that don't have any ratings yet. And then we ask them to rate it. How's the plot? How's the dialogue? How's the cinematography? And then we create a composite score that everybody else can use to figure out, okay, this film is a 9.5. I've never heard of Jordan Gelber, but maybe I'll give it a try because it has a high rating. So that's the goal, is we're giving audiences more data to decide on content that they wouldn't normally discover or give a chance.
Wow. There are two things you said that really stand out to me, which is number one, crowdfunding, which I want to talk about in a minute. But secondly is kind of developing a focus group. A lot of people don't have creative control when it gets to that ultimate level. And I think people want to be able to connect with their audience directly. And you really offer that and also kind of solve the problem of having a focus group. How do you know something is good before you bring it to somewhere else and they tear it apart? In terms of empowering content creators, were you more passionate about finding unique stories or just giving chances to people? Like what was, I mean, granted, both are exciting, but for you, what was the big mission behind the Filmocracy?
Ultimately, for me, it's about creating a fair market. There's so much nepotism in Hollywood, and like you don't really have a chance unless you know somebody. And it's just unfair, I think. It doesn't make sense. And there are many other industries that are like this, but Hollywood in particular is really, really who do you know type of industry. And I hate that. I hate that so much. So, creating more opportunity for filmmakers is the key driver for me personally. And so, like, I always tell people my ultimate goal is if I can help create a middle class of filmmakers, so it's not all boom or bust, like, that's what I would like to do. If you can keep making art while feeding yourself and having a house that you can live in, like, that's the dream for me.
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate goal for everybody because we all want to make a career out of this. And I feel like there's no middle point, but the middle ground is really what's come to the surface as the area that needs the most amount of love. And you really lend a voice to independent creators and who never had the chance before, and also who live in the middle of like Brazil or live in the UK or live in the United States. One thing that you've shared is, it's who you know, but nobody really knows who the distributors are. And streaming television has smashed open the entertainment industry. Everyone's trying to get involved with it. Everyone's trying to make an OTT platform. Everyone's trying to understand what is Netflix, what is TVOD, SVOD, AVOD, all those different fancy acronyms. But why do you think streaming television has made such an impact around the world for films? Because I think a lot of people associate streaming television more so with series.
Well, I think film is always going to be that kind of glamour industry. And I don't see that really changing, like being a movie star versus a TV star. It still holds that kind of cachet. And maybe that will change when Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt decide that they're going to do some TV shows. But in general, I don't think that's going to change, even though TV, for the most part, makes more consistent revenue by far. Mm-hmm. There are way fewer like bombs in the TV industry than there are in the film industry. So that's probably one of the other reasons. But I think a consequence of this is we have a lot of people who are trying to be first-time filmmakers making shorts and features as opposed to series. And if you're making a series, I mean, first of all, that's very ambitious. But second of all, like, it seems like that's the better way to go because everybody keeps talking about how, serial content is the most valuable content right now. But I think young filmmakers and people who are aspirational, which is what most filmmakers are, want that red carpet, want that premiere, want to be in theaters. And you're not going to get that as a TV series producer.
Very true. How did you know, or when did you know that you had something that was really different? Like when you were like, oh, first we're going to do a streaming platform. Okay, now people asking us about events. But how did you know that you finally had reached a place? Because you did it at a very really early stage in the launch, because you only launched last May, right? Like early 2020. And now it's a year later and you've got some exciting news to share that I'll let you share. But when was that aha moment?
So product market fit, I think, is what you're asking. And
yes,
that really did not happen with the streaming part, even though I felt like it was working. Like the things that we wanted to happen on the streaming side where people were watching, people were earning popcorn, spending popcorn, and also the movies that had ratings were watched more. The movies with high ratings were watched the most. Like that system was working, but it wasn't, I guess, like capturing people in a way that you want to see, like a hockey stick. So that was kind of frustrating. And once we started hosting these festivals, I knew that we had something when I was no longer trying to outreach and people were coming to me, which was an amazing pivot. And also, yeah, and when we got some bigger clients like the American film market came with us. So that really felt validating. So we've been doing that for the past 8 months or so, hosting more than 50, 60 film festivals now, I would say. And before, when we were reaching out to investors, because we're a startup, it was a lot of like trying to convince them to understand like this is big potential. It's a very niche, but also important part of the market that people are kind of ignoring. It's very fragmented. And it would just kind of like go over people's heads. They kept saying like, come back when you have 10,000 users, come back when you have revenue, come back when you are cash flow break even. And like at a certain point, I was just like, this is wasting my time. I spend this time somewhere else and make more money instead of like trying to convince people that I'm going to make money. So then we met this great organization that we spoke to for the past many, many months, negotiating for an acquisition deal, which we felt like was the best option for us because it would allow us to keep functioning independently, but also finance us. So very recently, the LOI, letter of intent, came out from Liquid Media Group, publicly traded company, to acquire. yeah, it's not a done deal yet, and we still have a lot of negotiating to do, but this is the first step that's required to go down that path, and we're very excited.
I'm very excited for you. I had a little dance. I was like, go, Paul. Yeah, and we could just have a hangout on Filmocracy. So when you talk about, like, I'm sure a lot of people listening are like, what do you mean by virtual events? What do you mean by streaming platform into virtual events? When you say someone like AFM, which is huge, I know that was a huge event last year, comes to you and says, I wanted to host my festival or my event on your platform, what does that mean and what does that intake?
So the first thing that we ask is, what do you want it to be? Because a lot of people don't have any idea what they want to do, and they just kind of say like, well, normally, physically, we would do X, Y, and Z. And so we try to reimagine what that looks like in a virtual environment, because we can actually duplicate most of the things that you want to do physically online. You obviously don't get that same type of energy that you do normally when you're in person with somebody sitting across from each other, but aside from that, everything is the same. So we map out like, okay, you want to do these panels, or you want to have a Q&A, or you want to have these films playing, but do you want them on demand, or do you want them to play on a schedule with linear programming? So we figure out all of those things, and we have them build a map that basically is kind of like a festival map. You can think of it like a theme park map, like a Disneyland map with different attractions. And people really like that because it gives you a lot of branding power to maintain the look and feel and experience that people have, instead of just clicking through a menu and being like, drop down, okay, this movie, like that's pretty boring. It's more utilitarian, but for us, it's really experiential, and that's the key point.
Yeah, I think Filmocracy definitely solved the experiential event situation last year where everyone was trying to do stuff. But even in general, because as we're going to a new year where events are becoming more in-person and hybrid, the problem that Filmocracy solves is you have that interactive component internationally, and you have avatars. And I love that you really highlight different films and creators, and like with the popcorn, because there's no place that I've seen prior on the same infrastructure where I can watch a film, go to a panel, talk to some new people, get some popcorn, and kind of hang out at different places and video conference at the same time. Did you know when you started this journey that it was going to be so interactive, or that just happened after the whole festival thing came to light?
I mean, I felt like it was really important. I felt like just having your own version of Netflix didn't really mean anything. I think it's because Tribeca, I think last year, went all online, and they just had a YouTube channel with a bunch of movies, and it was like, what is this? Why? I'm not going to spend any time here. This is boring. Like, these films don't mean anything without any context. So I think that was a key part. And once we figured out the best way to integrate different technologies into one cohesive environment, that was like game on.
Oh, yeah.
But there were many bumps in the road before that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I go to a festival, sometimes I don't even have the chance to go to every event or see every single film. I tend to miss something, or I can't get access to a red carpet because I'm not that cool yet. But I think on Filmocracy, you can see everything. It gives it really the audience member a chance to digest everything at a festival. For a content creator who's a part of a festival, what are some of the benefits to being a part of Filmocracy?
Well, I think you have more access than ever. Like, we have a premium subscription where we host about 5 to 6 film festivals a month. So your subscription allows you to go to all of them. And this is cool because you can go to so many film festivals and meet so many people and interact with them without leaving your house. And normally, like, if you're trying to go network with people, like, that's a lot of energy, a lot of flights and hotels and blah. And now you can do it really seamlessly. And a lot of these film festivals are trying to build their own virtual audiences. And you're meeting a lot of different creative people. You have more access to the festival directors very often because they're also there trying to make sure that everything is running right. And, they haven't built up that whole infrastructure yet. So you'll get more face time with them. So all in all, I think it's just a better way to do more. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're going to a physical festival, I look at that more like entertainment, like I'm going to a theme park or I'm going to a festival, music festival. Whereas if I'm a filmmaker, especially, I can get more networking and more work done through virtual festivals.
Why do you think virtual festivals, I got excited. Why do you think virtual festivals are going to stay? A lot of people have said that they're not necessarily going to stay, but I think, and I know that you agree, that virtual festivals will be here to stay. Why?
Well, we did a lot of surveys during the pandemic when we felt like, okay, one day things will wrap up and we'll go back to real life. What's going to happen? So we ran some surveys, and about 80% of the festival directors said that they will keep some form of virtual going on. Now that we're actually returning to normal, I think that number will be lower. I think that'll be closer to like 50, 60%, because I think people will just sort of regress to the mean. However, at the same time, we have this new wave of pure virtual film festivals that have no intention of ever being physical. And if they are physical, they're only renting out a theater so that they can say that they're screening in real theaters. And so there's this kind of like duality to it. And of the 50 to 60% that do go maintaining their virtual festivals, they'll do something hybrid. And that's something we are very keen on. And so we're developing a lot of interesting ways that we're calling them fusion, not hybrid, because hybrid can mean a lot of different things. It can be, I have a virtual festival before my physical festival, or maybe I have it at the same time, but they're different programming and they never interact with each other. So when we say fusion, we're talking about like these people interact with each other. I can see the physical person can talk to me, and we can watch the same content, the same films, watch the same panels without the festival director having to program two completely different lines of programming, which is just impossible. Most festival directors can barely make one festival happen, much less two.
Yes, I think we know that all too well. Festivals become like behemoth events because of all the programming. And I know that with Filmocracy, what's exciting is you give access to people that, let's say, for example, I was part of a festival, or one of my projects that I was working with got to be in Seoul Web Fest, and now is on Filmocracy. But if I didn't have the ability to travel to Seoul, which was an adventure within itself, at least I could still partake in being a part of it, or I could support my friends in being a part of it. You've really found a way to connect people internationally and still be a part of the success of their project. I feel, and maybe you feel the same way, that there's almost like a disconnect. Like if you can't be at your festival, you lose out on the whole experience in general. For screenings, what are some of the things that people offer to you? I mean, what do you offer? What am I talking about? What else do you offer for people? And then I have a very important question that I can't believe I haven't asked you yet. You know what? Forget that. I'm going to ask you this question. Okay, forget that. I really want to know. You mentioned before about crowdfunding. As we know, most filmmakers, what they do is they say, I'm going to make a film, and they go the crowdfunding route. But they go then, I made this film, and then I'm going to put it in a festival, and hopefully someone will pick it up. But they forget the distribution element. You've solved the distribution aspect of independent films, whether they're big or small. But speaking of crowdfunding, didn't Filmocracy start as a crowdfunding venture?
We did. We wanted to both market ourselves while raising some money, and that's kind of the perfect vehicle for Kickstarter. So we hired somebody. We were looking at a lot of agencies, and I'm going to name drop him because he's awesome.
Justin. We're friends with him.
Yes, Justin is the best.
Yeah, Justin Giddings.
The Kickstarter guy. So he helped us with our campaign. We completed successfully. He has like a 93% success rate or something.
I think crazy. It's 97% success rate. I don't know. It's in the high upper 90s. Justin Giddings for
overachiever.
Overachiever.
So I think the main thing when filmmakers are going to do this is they need to think about what is their goal. Too often I think it's like, I'm going to make a great movie and see where the cards fall. And if I get onto Netflix,
here we go.
But that rarely, like, you need to know exactly what you expect from your film. And if you're going to make a $15,000 drama and thinking that somebody's going to pay you $1 million to distribute it, you're out of your mind. So I think a lot of times also is people don't think of this incrementally, that you can build on something that you're doing. So saying like, I'm going to raise $1 million in my Kickstarter campaign, that's kind of crazy. But
Yes.
if you say, okay, I have some investors that I know in my own network who are willing to put a little bit of money, and then I'm going to do this crowdfunding campaign. So if I kind of merge the two, either my crowdfunding campaign looks better because I already have like $50,000 coming in that boosts up how it looks, or if I can take what I've raised on Kickstarter and then go to more investors and be like, look, I already have this group of people who support me. I'm going to make this great film. Look, like, people believe in me. You believe in me too. Give me some money. Mm-hmm. So like, you can build on each successive thing. And if you have both of those things, then what can you do? Well, maybe then you reach out to distributors and you say, look, maybe this distribution company has financed some films before. That's obviously very important that they do this sometimes. And then you say, I have 50,000 from Kickstarter. I have 50,000 from these private investors. Let's turn this into a $250,000 budget film, and you finance the rest.
Movie.
Yeah, like, take these pieces, build it together like Lego blocks, and that's how you're going to make something cool, instead of just like, I'm going to make a $25,000 indie drama and awesome Netflix.
Yeah, I feel like everyone drops Netflix. They're like, oh, I want to make something Netflix. You and I are not only filmmakers and producers, but we are also distributors. Like, obviously, we hang out, we do stuff, we both distribute content. One of my pet peeves is that everyone thinks that Netflix, which I don't want to hate on Netflix, Netflix is amazing in many ways, but is the only platform available, or it's Hulu, or it's HBO Max, or it's, I don't know, now Peacock. Why do you think content creators and other, whether they're for short films, or series, should start looking into spending time discovering micro platforms? Because I wouldn't even consider your platform a micro platform, but it's not well known like Netflix, but there's a huge movement in that.
I think the same thing goes for film festivals, and I mean, just in general, like, the smaller platforms are going to give you the attention that you need and the opportunity that you need. Like, let's say Netflix does acquire your film. You're never getting on the first page. And if you're not
sorry, everybody.
Sorry.
No, it's true. That's why we have this podcast. Like, keep it real. Like, you're never going to be on the first page. It's not going to be heavily marketed, but what else?
Right. So you can be there, but if that means people have to search for you to find you. Whereas if you go with one of these smaller platforms and they really like your film, like, you're probably going to be one of the better films on their platform. Mm-hmm. So they're incentivized to help you, market you, push you to the top. Like, that's what we do with Filmocracy, is we put all our highest rated films in their own section. And then we'll also pick out films that we like and feature them, because, we're trying to attract subscribers, and, we're not getting these big, $20 million Netflix movies or series. So we have to find the gems that exist out there. And if your film is a gem, wow, I really want that. And I want to help you, because helping you helps me. So for Netflix, helping you does not help them at all. Like, in fact, that ruins their business model, because they have other incentives in place. So I think what you're saying, Jordan, makes a lot of sense. Like, focus on the more realistic places that you can get distributed, and people that will give you some TLC that will help you further in your career. Because again, you want to build up to things. If you can be the number one film on X platform, or like be really successful on X platform, you have a better chance then to go to this next bigger platform and maybe get an MG. Like, that's what happens on our platform as well. There are films that perform well. We have distributors who come on Filmocracy and are like, which ones are the best? They email me and they say, can you put me in touch with this filmmaker and this filmmaker and this filmmaker? And then I say, yes, of course. Connect. People get distribution. Like, win-win. And that, for us, many other companies will probably take some cut of that deal, but we don't, even though we're losing the content as a result of it. But that's really the goal. How do you help people blossom?
I think that goes back to the point you're saying before, having like this middle class area of entertainment professionals. That's what I'm so passionate about, why I'm so excited to be working with Filmocracy, right? Is that you have this great platform that's unique, that shines these little darlings that nobody knows about, and you're making business deals. You're getting them exactly what they've been looking for because you yourself are innovative. So for everyone listening, the lesson to learn from what we just mentioned is develop relationships with distributors and streaming platforms that want to build relationships with you. You know, you want to be a shiny diamond amidst a sea of other unique shiny diamonds, not like in a library where it's just filled with a bunch of other people just like you. What is something that you find most filmmakers do not know or are completely clueless when it comes to distribution or content creation in general?
Clueless. Well,
It's going to put you on the spot.
I think the hardest thing is like people are so blind to the quality of their own projects, and that's the most frustrating thing. Like
I didn't mean to laugh, but it's so true.
These people will like watch. We've all been watching movies and TV shows our whole lives, and honestly, like we're almost all desensitized because we've seen so much. Like we have all consumed so much content and seen like every story and every potential twist and all these different ways that you can story tell, and you get desensitized. And yet people see their own project, what they made, and they think that this is like so good or so appropriate for Netflix, for example. Like,
which is the only platform that they know, apparently.
Yeah. And it's just really impressive to me that you have this like passion enough that you're willing to like raise money from somewhere. Like making a movie is hard. Even if you make a crappy movie, that was hard. And to then come out of it and think like without like objective eyes. I mean, I know that's a lot to ask, but isn't that what we kind of have to do? Is like see what we've built. Like if I made Filmocracy and it was garbage, I would hope that I would know that. And you know, there were very early versions of Filmocracy that were garbage, and so I had to fix it. And so for films, it's kind of similar. Like you have to look at it with more objective eyes, and be realistic about your expectations. And if you're going to take your film to a Netflix, they will reject you right away because it's probably not good enough. But if it's like a very specific type of film, let's just go with the tried and true model of genre, or like a horror film, right?
Horror films, yeah, go ahead.
Like you can be bad and also good, and that's kind of special. So if you're a filmmaker, I would actually say like do that, because you have the highest chance of success, because star power really doesn't make as big of an impact as it does for every other genre. So, you know, trying to be objective, but also trying to be realistic, and also do horror instead of drama 10 out of 10 times.
Everybody do horror all the time. All the time. Halloween every day Halloween. Now, in terms of filmmaking, I have found that most people really don't know what their film is about. I feel like people think their film is one thing, or they have all the sirens in New York blasting in their ear. I think that a lot of people, they believe that their film is so amazing, or they believe that their idea is so innovative, which it might be. Like, granted, there are plenty of unique filmmakers and plenty of people who have taken a concept and flipped it on its head and made something brand new. But I find that, and this goes along why I think Filmocracy is so special, is that they have no idea how to market their project. They have no idea what it's really about. And they have a very selfish reason why they've made it versus a broader, like more community-based. And filmmaking is community-based, going back to what you said about it's really who you know. Filmocracy is not about like you yourself making it happen, but you offering and empowering filmmakers to create. What are some of the misconceptions you think people have about streaming television? Or not even television, streaming platforms, because streaming has been the big buzzword, right? The OTTs and the streaming and all that stuff, but people really don't understand how it works. So what are some kind of bullet points that you feel people gloss over that they should really pay more attention to?
Well, people seem to think streaming is free because it's on the internet. Like,
it's free. Everything is free.
Yeah, like data transfer, especially for like live streaming, like most of the internet streaming is run by AWS, Amazon's media arm, and it's expensive. It costs a lot of money to send files to each person. And I think a lot of people don't understand how computers work, so they don't really get why it's expensive. But literally, when you watch a film online, you are downloading that film and watching it and then deleting it. That's streaming. So that all costs money if I'm doing it to thousands or hundreds of thousands of people for 24 hours a day. There's a lot of costs involved. And I think streaming has it's still kind of the Wild West. You have like the very big players, of course, but then it's like everywhere. I have an OTT platform. I have an OTT platform, because you also have these companies that cookie cutter allow you to make your own streaming platform for like $500 a month. Mm-hmm. And so that's what a lot of these players are doing. I mean, I'm part of a streaming mastermind group with like 30 different streaming platforms.
Wow.
Where we just bounce ideas off of each other and things like that. But it's hard to know who's real and who's not real and who's going to succeed or fail. And so you really have to like make sure that the deals that you make with these people are fair to you, so you can get out at any time if they're not giving you any like real financial commitment. Because I think there's going to be a culling of streaming platforms, even though we'll still have like all of these people trying to make streaming platforms, because it's the internet. Like anybody can make a streaming platform now. But
it's very true. Don't give away all our secrets.
Yeah, right now it's like all the big players are here and then everybody else is here. But I think eventually it's going to be the big players and then the mid-sized players who are either demographic specific or genre specific, like Shudder, for example, mm-hmm. which is a big horror streaming site. Like they will have that part of the market and then everyone else will kind of be here. So if you're going to this level, there's a lot of risks involved there. So just make sure that you're aware of those things. And if you can get to the mid-tier, that can then hopefully, gain you some notoriety or some traction and build on yourself so you can get to the upper tier. Like that's the way you go. You build up your career. You don't just jump into Quentin Tarantino's director's chair, right?
Quentin Tarantino couldn't even jump into his director chair when he got started. So I think, I think it's about being pragmatic about your career. And a lot of creators forget that there's a whole business world to what happens after they've done making their like life story on film, which it's great. I love creators, as do you, but they forget that after they spend all the money to get the fancy actor, to get the 5 red cameras that they're determined to get or whatever, they forget that there's a whole marketing aspect to it. Like, how do I invest money to distribution? How do I invest money into getting people to see it? How do I showcase that my project is worth the time and investment from these bigger players? So one of the things that you mentioned about Filmocracy is you do all this interactive voting and experience. Now, like I said earlier, it's like a focus group. I know that what's great, like why YouTube's creators were so successful when it started, was that you could show Google Analytics with these awesome shows, and you could say, like, everyone talks about HBO Max, not to talk about just the streaming television, but everyone talks about how High Maintenance was originally greenlit on Vimeo, and then HBO came in and bought the rights and took it. But the reason why, they can show the analytics. You can show, or Broad City, that's even better because it's YouTube. Broad City had the analytics. Oh, we had this many subscribers and this many views and things like that. You show how many people not only watched, but took the time to vote and took the time to rate it and do those things, that people can take the information they've received from Filmocracy and bring it to those distributors who come to your platform. What successes have happened so far? Like how many films, can you say that? How many like projects have had for future distribution deals from the research that happens with Filmocracy?
I would say somewhere between like 20 to 50 range.
That's awesome.
The main thing is, it's a lot of data that's really valuable. When the Weinstein Company was a thing, they would have you fill out this form when you went there, and you would write your name, and then right underneath that, you would write your social media following. So this really big, independent, like well-known, prestigious company, that was the second question that they were asking for, because that is another data point. And everybody needs something to point to when things go wrong, to say like, okay, this film flopped or this project flopped, but they had shown success on X, Y, and Z, so it's not my fault. And that's kind of what data serves a purpose for a lot of these junior executives and mid-level executives. You have to convince your boss, who then convinces their boss, and you need some ammo to do that. What is ammo? It's data. So Filmocracy is really focused on creating like all this sort of data. What is the film's completion rate? What are the ratings for all these films? How do these ratings compare to other films on the platform or other similar genres on the platform? We even have a leveling system on the platform that basically the more popcorn you earn, you level up, and that gives you more weight on the platform because now we trust you, we trust your judgment, so you have more impact on the score. So then we can even look at these subgroups of like, okay, these people who are really good at rating stuff on the platform all like this film, even though some other people might not like this film. And maybe that means that it has a very specific audience that this appeals to versus not. So at the end of the day, it's just about trying to collect as much data as possible, putting as many bullets in the chamber as you can so that they can go out and use this information. So that's the type of information we have right now, but we will continue to make that play. You did say something earlier that I wanted to touch on.
Yes, please.
These days, people are telling you and telling each other, as a filmmaker, you need to be wearing a lot of hats, and you have to think about not only the financing and production of your film, but the distribution and marketing and the entire life cycle. There's a case study from Sundance a few years ago about the movie Columbus, which won some awards at Sundance. It had John Cho. And they decided to not take the biggest offer that they got, which was for $150K. And they decided to self-distribute. And it took them 2 years to like rent out all the theaters on their own, go on the road. Like this was a lot of work. At the end of it all, they made about $600,000. So they quadrupled what they would have gotten from the distributor. But their overall total budget was $700K. So they still lost money, even though they put in all that energy and effort. And I think if you're able to do it, like if you went and did it, Jordan, and like wore all the hats and did all of the things, I think you'd be successful. But I think most people
wear all the hats all the time.
Yeah. But it's unreasonable to say to every single filmmaker, go out and like change your whole life, stop doing everything, like finance, produce, distribute, market, exhibit everything, and learn everything. Like that's crazy. And nobody can do every one of these pieces is a dozen jobs. So how can you as a single filmmaker do all of those things well? And I think that's unfair to expect filmmakers to be able to do that and to learn all of that. Even though there's a lot of tools out there and a lot of podcasts to listen to that teach you things. But at the end of the day, I think Filmocracy needs to come in and like take over for you so you don't have to do all of that. Maybe you only have to do half of that, and then you can still succeed. Like that's why it's important, I think, that these tools and platforms come out so filmmakers are not expected to be the be all end all everything for their film.
I couldn't agree with you more. I really, really couldn't. It's important to develop relationships with people that are doing something different and supporting you in areas that you're not that great in. I always say, find people where your strengths are their weaknesses and their strengths are your weaknesses, so you can support each other. Because it's true. I mean, I have my own business. You have your own business. We wear many hats already because we're excited about the things that we're building, but that came with time and experience. You didn't wake up one day and say, "Oop, Filmocracy came out of thin air." It took time to get here, and it took so many different variations. Same with filmmaking. Like, you don't necessarily need to know how to do a spreadsheet. That's why you have a line producer, perhaps. Or like, you don't need to know every single distribution option, but you should be at least aware to some capacity of what's there for you, and then finding someone out there who can help you navigate that. And that's why I really believe in these kind of like launchpad streaming platforms that not only can make careers happen, but can really help people navigate the messy side of the business side of the entertainment industry. And I think it's important to notice that, you can do that for them. So for people that aren't a part of festivals, let's say they didn't come to you in a festival. They were like, hey, I have a film. I want to put it on Filmocracy. Do you have that option available to them?
Yeah, it's an open submission. Anybody can send us a screener link. It's just submissions, plural, at filmocracy.com. Someone from our team, probably an intern, will watch it first, and then maybe I will watch it, maybe not, depending on how much I trust that intern. And then if we like it, we'll put it on the platform. We'll make a non-exclusive, straight distribution deal. It's not very complicated. And we'll see how it does. You can take it down at any time. We'll share the revenue with you 50-50. And that's really how it goes. Like, we're not in the business of going out and acquiring movies for big amounts of money. We haven't ever done that. And I don't think we'll do that in the near future. Maybe one day. But also it's like, this is kind of the strategy that a lot of companies use. Like Amazon did this. They're like, oh, everyone put your films on Amazon. It's free. We'll give you money, blah. Then once they make it, and after they've used your content to say, look, we have 20,000 films on the platform, then they just like delete you from the platform and they move on and start making their own original content. So I'm not looking to do that. I'm looking to focus on the content that's already being made. There's plenty of it that needs highlighting. I'm not looking into original productions or really even, acquiring money for MGs or anything.
Wow. I think that's really cool that you're open and available to a lot of people, because you don't need to do that. I think there's enough people that need their stories showcased versus people being like, hey, buy in, do this. What's going on? Like, give me your investor deck. So just so people know out there, if they get on Filmocracy, you are available internationally. Where can people find Filmocracy and how accessible is it? Because I know that's a really big question with content creators, is accessibility.
Filmocracy is worldwide. Well, there's like a small list of countries that we can't get into, and a whole bunch of political reasons for that. But it's also free to use with ads. So anybody can sign up. Anybody can watch these movies. We have about 3,500 right now. And if you watch and rate them, then you'll earn some popcorn that you can take into our shop and get things like games, gift cards, electronics. And at the end of the month, the people that earn the most popcorn will share 10% of our revenue. So you'll earn that in the form of popcorn, and you can just take all that and swap it for like a gift card to Amazon. Why did I say that? To Visa or something instead.
Getting all the popcorn, it will be mine forever. Great. I think, Paul, I really love your platform. I do, because I totally hang out on it all the time. They have a virtual yacht, guys. You have to hang out on it. But for those out there who are filmmakers and those out there who have festivals and want to host a festival or another event, because I know you're opening to other events soon, how can people find you?
You can always email me, paul@filmocracy.com. Very easy. Or you can just go to our website, filmocracy.com, and you'll see at the bottom there's like a link to get to our festival page, because we're a B2B2C platform. So we have the business side and the consumer side. The consumer side is the streaming part. So if you want to reach like the business part, then you would just go to festival.filmocracy.com.
Thank you so much. And for everyone listening, I give you another amazing episode of Content and Consequences. We will be officially doing all of our podcasts now on Filmocracy, this amazing platform empowering other creative individuals around the world. Thank you, Paul, for being so amazing. I'm so grateful to know you, and I look forward to doing lots more great stuff with you. And tune in next time to Content and Consequences.